You know, on this channel, we talk a lot about our defenders, the Ukrainian soldiers, warriors who stand on the front lines and make sure that Russia stays exactly where it belongs in the trash bin of history. And that's good because these guys are absolute legends. But today we are going to talk about some different heroes, the ones we usually don't mention. Ukrainian cops, yes, my friends, the Ukrainian police. And if you just rolled your eyes and thought, come on, man, cops, trust me, you have no idea. Because these guys have been doing some insane stuff, not just since February 2022, but all the way back in 2014. These are the people who, instead of hiding or saying, this is not our job, went out there in 2014 and 2022 and fought for their cities together with Ukrainian soldiers. They were the ones defending law and order, but also pulling civilians out of bombed buildings. They were the ones stopping looters when society was on the edge of chaos in the destroyed towns. They were the ones helping the army shoot down Russian Shahed drones. And let me remind you of something absolutely crazy: the defense of Kyiv in those very first weeks. You remember when Russians tried to break through the lines of Ukraine's defense and reach the capital city. Do you know who was there alongside our soldiers? Ukrainian cops. They were armed with assault rifles, RPGs, and in some cases with Molotov cocktails. Imagine police officers in military-grade body armor facing Russian tanks and armored vehicles and literally burning them street by street and bridge by bridge. These guys arrested Russian spies hiding in the apartments. They hunted down sabotage groups in Kyiv, in Sumy, in Kharkiv, and some of them died in ambushes trying to prevent Russian terrorists from blowing up our infrastructure. So today we're going to talk about the blue uniforms that became part of the defense of our country. The men and women who proved that during a full-scale invasion, the badge is not only a symbol of law, but also a symbol of courage. Back in 2014, when Russia decided to take Crimea and light the whole Donbas on fire, Ukraine faced a brutal truth. Our old police system, the one everyone hated for corruption and bribes, simply wasn't ready to war. But then Ukrainian people stepped up. We're talking about volunteers, patriots, and common guys and girls who didn't want to sit at home while Russian-backed terrorists and Russian nationals were seizing cities in the east. And this is exactly how the first Special Force police battalions were born. These were not the cops you remember from before the Maidan. They were new faces. They were ordinary Ukrainians, many without any police experience, who signed up because the country needed them. They went to Donetsk, Luhansk, Mariupol. They fought in the anti-terrorist operation side by side with the Ukrainian army and the National Guard. Names like Kyiv 1, Dnipro 1, Mirotvorets, they all started as volunteer battalions under the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and these units became legendary in Ukraine. They were fighting on the front lines, but also stopping things like arms smuggling, hunting terrorists, and clearing towns after liberation. That was the first major shift. Ukrainians saw for the first time that the police could actually be heroes, not just fat dudes stopping cars and taking bribes on the highway. And from that point on, everything started to change. The old rotten system was dismantled and the National Police of Ukraine was born, a force that took the spirit of those volunteers, the guys who fought in Donbas, and brought it into the law enforcement all over the country. A lot of Ukrainians remember those very first recruits of the Ukraine's patrol police in 2015 with new uniforms, new cars, and most importantly, a new mindset. These guys were trained by professionals from the United States, Canada, and other countries that had real experience and were considered some of the best in terms of law enforcement. The idea was to break away from the corruption, bring in the transparency, and make the cops a real service for the people. I remember talking to some of those guys back in the days, and they were extremely motivated. They believed they could change the system from inside, and actually many of them did. One key figure in this transformation was Volodymyr Lisnichuk, the chief of the police academy in Kyiv, and my former commander in Kyiv 1 in 2015. A true professional and one of those who understand that this war is not only about guns, trenches, and fighting Russian invaders, but also fighting crime and aggression. And he pushed for the highest standards in training, discipline, and tactical readiness. But reforms didn't stop just there. To resolve special situations, Ukraine needed something more than patrol cops, something like SWAT. And this is how CORD was born, the Ukrainian Special Force Unit. CORD in Ukrainian stands for Operative Rapid Action Corps. These guys were trained using the best practices from American SWAT teams as well as European counter-terror units. They learned breaching techniques, they learned CQB, hostage rescue, high-risk arrests, and counter-terrorism operations. And since 2016, CORD has been the tip of the spear when it comes to fighting organized crime, drug cartels, and of course Russian sabotage groups. And here's what's interesting: when the full-scale Russian invasion started, CORD didn't just sit in the barracks. They were out there in places like Irpin, Bucha, Brovary. They were engaged in enemy recon units, burning Russian tanks, hunting spies, and doing raids under fire. They were a truly powerful force, highly trained, well-equipped, and absolutely ruthless against those who threaten our citizens. So the Ukrainian police evolved from a broken Russia-style corrupt system into a force with proper training, modern tactics, and of course units like CORD, ready for the worst scenarios. And speaking of readiness, let's talk about their tools. Compared to the old system, the patrol police, for example, went through a serious upgrade. Instead of those ancient Makarov pistols from the Soviet era that Russians still use, they were issued Glock 17s, Fort 12s, and Fort 14s. For patrol duties, of course, that's perfectly enough. And alongside with sidearms, they've got modern body armors, expandable batons, pepper spray, tasers, and in some regions shotguns for high-risk situations. Patrol police is also often seen armed with submachine guns like Hector Koch MP5, as well as Fort 221 and 224. And of course the AK-74 are still there for situations when the range is crucial, for example, shooting down the Russian kamikaze drones. But the real heavy hitters, that's CORD, of course. These guys roll out with everything from Glock pistols to assault rifles like M4, AK variants, and they train with modern optics, breaching tools, and equipment. The operatives received different types of armor, like plate carriers, also heavy armor. They also received ballistic helmets, night vision gear, and armored vehicles for urban assaults and also for fast deployment. Basically, those guys are trained and prepared for situations like a high-risk arrest or counter-terrorist operations. And then came February 2022. When the Russian full-scale invasion started, the police had to adapt really fast, and suddenly even common patrol cops on Ukrainian streets were seen carrying AK-74s, AR-15s, sometimes machine guns like PKMs, and sometimes even anti-tank grenade launchers. The police stations in Kyiv turned into mini strongholds. In some cases, they even received manpads to shoot down Russian missiles and aircraft. Also, court and other special units started using Western gear that arrived through international aid. We're talking about things like thermal optics, advanced plate carriers, breaching charges, drones for reconnaissance, and other things. So from basic patrol work to full-on urban warfare, the national police in Ukraine has evolved into something entirely new. Today, these guys not only keep the streets of Ukraine safe, they're out there shooting down Shaheds, fighting sabotage groups, and sometimes holding the lines next to the soldiers. And in a war like this, that makes all the difference. My dear friends, let me know if you like this episode, and also don't forget to subscribe. I'm Operator Starsky. Thanks for watching.